one. And I can't see anybody. There we go. Hi. Sorry. Like I said, we're not professionals. Happy Wednesday, everyone, and welcome to the Sisters Interview. My name is Ashaksi, and this is my sister Sarifkin, and tonight is our last show of 2020, which is kind of exciting.
How was it the end of 2020?
I'm kind of thankful. And we get to go out with a bang. Our guest this evening is Sir Artos, and welcome.
Thank you.
You're currently in CAID, and you started out in the West.
I did.
What is your SCA origin story?
Oh my goodness. It is actually one of my favorite stories to tell. So I was, I think, 13 years old and playing D&D with my friends, and my friend's dad was our DM, and he took us to a gaming convention in the Bay Area, and it was either PacificCon or DunderCon. It was a long time ago. I can't honestly tell you which one it was at this point. And as happens at cons, there was an SCA demo. So this was my first time I ever saw the SCA. And all of these knights, they're all knights to me at this point, right? All of these knights are crashing into each other and hitting each other with swords in amazing looking armor. And I knew I had to do this immediately. I had to do this. So I walked over and I approached one of the fighters, took their helmet off, and it was a woman under the helmet. And I asked her, I said, what do I have to do to fight? She says, well, you have to do all these things and you have to be at least 16 with parents' permission. So of course I was crushed. I was at least a few years off from being 16. And then years later, so I guess I was at the end of junior high or beginning of high school at that point. Towards the end of high school, met some other nerds that went to a different high school, also gamers. And they had had a friend who had gone off to college and gotten involved with the SCA in college. And so that became my gateway to actually get into this thing that I'd been interested in since I was 13 and had no idea how to get into. And of those people I got into, one of them is still very active in the SCA. It's Sir Bjorn Yourselfer of Bearhaven from Sinagua. And he and I are still really good friends to this day. And that woman under the helmet that I met at that point, that turned out to be Duchess Maven from the West, who years later we became very good friends. And I have a story about her from my knighting as well because of that. So, I know it's weird how the world kind of wraps around.
She's like a little personal hero of mine. She's amazing.
Same. You, me, same, definitely.
That's awesome. So where were you when you actually started to become active? What area? So
I was just finishing up high school, end of senior year in high school, I think, ish, when I got involved, 87, 88. And so me and my friends that I got in with, we went to some local events, met a bunch of people. That's where I started to meet people who eventually I would realize became my heroes, right? Duke Radnor, Gildemar, my knight, Duke Obadiah, the Obstreperous, people like that. And I immediately went up to college at Humboldt State University, which is up in the Barony of Alicia up in Northern California. And when I got there, I found a local group, the Barony, great, it's Barony. And they immediately told me that there was a group on campus that was looking to start up a college branch. And as soon as those people found out that I was interested and wanted to be part of this, I instantly recruited. I believe they made me herald right off the bat. I don't think I'd done any heraldry at that point. So I was one of the founding officers of the College of St. Brendan at Humboldt State University and spent my first, I think, 5 years there, up in the very northern edge of the West, right next to Ontario.
Very cool. Did you do Ontario West Wars during that time?
That's a great question. I don't think I did. I don't think I did Ontario West Wars until I was out of college. I might have done one my senior year. The difficulty, of course, being that it's from the Bay Area and I would go home during the summers, right? And maybe have a summer job or whatever that happened to be. And so I didn't necessarily travel that way. Maybe I went once or twice. I certainly remember a war at Castle Dunlop, and that might have been while I was still in college at that site. Certainly after college, I started going pretty much every year, right? From the Wairika sites and the Crescent City sites, and then up, of course, now to, and then we were near Eugene at least 1 year, and then finally to the Gold Beach site. I love that war. The Gold Beach site in particular is one of my favorite sites in the SCA.
It's awesome. It's definitely my favorite Ontario West War site that we've had.
It's pretty amazing. It's really medieval.
Very cool. So, did you the fighting kind of drew you in?
You know what? That's interesting. I would say the fighting drew me in, yet when I started, I actually, at that point in my life, I was 17, I think. I wasn't sure I was going to fight. And I think part of that was I had never really done any contact sports at that point. Wasn't sure as a youth if I wanted to get hit. A number of people I knew were getting into the fighting. And admittedly, I'm a bit of a contrarian. So I was kind of trying to do something they necessarily weren't doing at that point. I know. I bite my nose off to spite my face sometimes. I try and fight that. I couldn't resist the call though. So even though I got in and started doing heraldry, and I dove deep into heraldry, I was the College Herald and the Baronial Herald at one point, and was very involved in the College of Arms in the West for a long time.
Wow.
I couldn't help but get drawn into the fighting because that was my medieval dream, right? I wanted to be a knight. I wanted to be a knight from the first time I found Lord of the Rings on my parents' bookshelf when I was, I don't know, 6 or 7 or something like that. From the first time I got a D&D book for Christmas in '77, right? I wanted to be a knight. And now I realize I had a path to do it. So as I got into college, I was like, okay, this fighting thing's going to happen too. And I, started putting my armor together, and of course, immediately became martial and other things like that, revolving around fighting, since that's where my focus was at that point.
Did somebody help you put your gear together?
Absolutely. So my friend David, who was the person that was the catalyst that had already gone to college and helped the rest of us that weren't in college yet get into the SCA. He's very crafty, and he had set up an armoring shop. He had learned armoring from other local armorers, and he had set up an armor shop in his garage, and he helped me start to put together as much as I could of my own armor. Sure, I used a bunch of loaner stuff in the beginning, and I had a loaner helmet. I think probably for the first couple of years, man, helmets were really hard to come by in the late 80s and early 90s, right? Pre-internet and things like that. You had to know somebody, meet an armorer, have the money when you ended up at an event, and somebody had one for sale or something. So for the first couple of years, I used a loaner. Other than that, I got out of loaner armor as fast as I could. And I made all of my own first set of armor, like everything. Funny enough, some of it, specifically in the gorget, I still use to this day. Like it's still the same leather and a couple of plates in my gorget for part of it. Some of it's been replaced that I built when I was probably 18 or 19.
Wow.
Yeah.
Fresh padding though, because
I wear a gambeson with a high collar.
Oh, okay.
That's my standard look. So then I can just put whatever on top of it at that point.
So he gets to wash his padding.
I do. And I do wash my padding. Being in CAID now, I got to say, it's much easier to let your padding dry out. I have a portable clothes rack, and I just drop it in the backyard, put my gambeson and everything on a hanger after practice, the next day after practice, and it's dry in a couple of hours.
Yeah, that leads to green mold where we are.
I had a little bit of that.
I know.
When I was up at St. Brendan's, we definitely had that problem.
It's Harry.
It's so gross. And then you just, all of a sudden, all this work you put into, right? Whether it was financially or time and materials, it's just wasted. You're like, I have to throw that out now.
Well, no. I would wear it, and then I would have an asthma attack from the mold because I'm cheap.
That's fair.
Yeah. Anyway, tell me what drew you to heraldry. Like you said, you're super interested in heraldry.
So I didn't know much about heraldry other than kind of what I'd gleaned by being a fantasy and medieval nerd growing up as a kid. And when they asked me to be herald, it was because the person who had the most heraldry experience basically just had the most experience, and so it was going to be the college seneschal. Made total sense, right? They needed to be that person to do it. They'd been doing SCA for a few years already. And they said, hey, we're going to teach you. And I have a logical process brain. It's been a big part of me growing my career and doing all the things I've done in my life since. And that just lends itself to things like understanding heraldry and doing blazons and helping people assemble stuff in the right order. So it just kind of like played into all of these parts of my personality. And then as I started, and that was just the book heraldry, voice heraldry and field heraldry. I'm not afraid to be loud and run around and talk to people. So that was very comfortable to me as well. When I was not fighting in crowns, it allowed me to be on the field, right, and be near the fighting, even when I wasn't fighting. So everything about heraldry was great. And then I met all of these great people that were running the College of Heralds in the West at that point. Baroness Allison von Markheim was Vesper Principal Herald, and she was great. She just mentored me and helped me out and was super friendly. At the time, I think we were running the monthly submission meetings in her basement in Berkeley. And that was really neat. So I got to get to know all of these people that, right, this is the late 80s, early 90s. So all these people who were SCA founders or really close to it, right? Duke Frederick of Holland was there. Mistress Elsa Bourne, right? All of these people that were from the early part, and I got to hang out with them. And that was super fun for me.
And it gives you a good, solid cultural foundation.
It did. I felt like I got a good basis for what the West was at that point in time. And admittedly, that informed my opinions for a long time until I became a fully formed adult and started being able to make my own, at which point some of them diverged. And that's just the way that goes. And I really appreciate all those people for taking the time and, you know, working with this young kid with giant blonde curly hair, who was super, just wanted to know everything. Yeah.
Those are the best kind, though.
Thank you. I like to think I wasn't too annoying for being that super interested and engaged teenager that I was. So.
Oh, I have a teenager who's kind of the opposite. So
Yeah.
Engagement is like, oh, that's so nice.
You can't predict.
No, you cannot.
No.
So you got your armor together and you started fighting. How long did it take you to decide that you wanted to squire to somebody?
I don't think it was that long. I feel it was the summer of 1989, I think, when I became a man-at-arms. And myself and Sir Bjorn and the other friends that we were in the SCA with, we were very fortunate in that our friend Dave had become a man-at-arms to Sir Gerson Haley and Mistress Serana. And they were great pillars of the West at the time. And they took us all in, like all of these foundling kids, and they brought us all in. They let us sleep in their giant household pavilion. And we washed their dishes, right? We did all the things that you do when you help out when you're starting. And I got to know Sir Gerson's senior squire, Sir Theodoric of Skane. And then when he was knighted, we had gotten pretty close. Like we had a lot of similar interests. We were both a little kooky. We had crazy blonde curly hair both, right? It was a thing. And he asked me to be his man-at-arms and also asked Sir Bjorn. And then I think it was like a year later, we squired to him. That timeline gets fuzzy when you go back a number of years, as I'm sure you know. I could look at some dates and really figure it out by looking like the West Kingdom history site. Like I could look at some dates and I could figure it out. And I knew that my impression was at 18 that if I wanted to get knighted, I had to be squired, right? That was just what had been taught to me at that point in the SCA. So I'm like, yeah, well, I'm going to squire. So I squired to Sir Theodoric at that point, and I was squire to him all through college until after college when I started my career. Life changed in a number of interesting, in that may live in interesting times kind of way. And I didn't want to be, I had a very strong opinions that squires should be fighting at that time. And I knew I wasn't going to be fighting for a while. And so I turned in my belt to him we're still good friends and everything. And I was like, I can't show up for an event once a year and wear a red belt and say I'm a squire. That wasn't personally something I could do. So that was the first night I was squired to.
When you were squired to Theodoric, were you primarily a sword and shield like tourney fighter, or were you into melees, or both?
So I definitely did some sword and shield at that time, though I would say that my primary focus was melee. I started up a war unit at the college that was then part of like a subunit of Blackwood Mercenary Brigade. And we would field 10 plus people from the college, probably half heavy fighters, half javelineers at that point in time. It was back in the time of light armor. So it was very easy to get javelineers into kit and get them out on the field, right? It was our gateway. And I loved melee. Man, I didn't run in the shield wall that often. I know you can't tell from video. I'm what you would call, in normal world, I'm a medium. In the SCA, I'm definitely like a petite, right? I'm 5'7", 160 pounds, and I was skinnier then. So the shield wall is not the smart bet for me in most cases. So I was commanding the unit, and I'd run pike back there. I'd also pick up any weapon possible. Sir Theodoric was very well known for fighting with any weapon and making some very strange weapons out of rattan at the time. And so that was just what we did. Any weapon, you picked it up and you could just fight with any weapon. And I loved it. I loved melee at the time. And then over my career, that's actually flip-flopped, right, in the SCA, where I really love now the single combat and the training. I love training other people. I'm a coach professionally in my job, in the teams I lead, and I'm a coach in the SCA. And it's just the thing that gets me going now compared to when I was 20.
So eventually that life change circled around.
It did. As life does.
And you got back into the SCA.
I did. I probably had so I met my wife, Mr. Sayoun, in the SCA in 1994 at a June Crown. And I wasn't incredibly active at that point. We would go to a few events a year. Most of it was to go to some wars and hang out with some friends because I was very much focused on my career. And then in the early 2000s, that was where just like I was established in my career. I felt like I had more time and space. I'd reconnected with some friends from college, including Duke Thorfinn the Cruel, who is one of my oldest and best friends and my squire brother, technically, though we were never squire to ob at the same time because of the way all that worked out. And I was like, yeah, it's time to get back in the SCA. And Sam was just like, yeah, it's fine. Let's get back in the SCA. So that was in the early 2000s, probably 99, 2000, I think, is where I got back in. So I had a good 6 or 7 years where I wasn't incredibly active because I had a different thing that I was focusing on at that point. And then when I got back in, so my student, who you may know, Master Paul Fitzdennis. So he is down here in CAID, and he is one of my fighting students. He was my squire, and then he got both his laurel and his pelican, and so he's my student now because that's how that works. And he likes to say, he has a say about don't do anything half-assed. If you're going in with at least 3 ass cheeks. And that's incredibly true for just who we are as people like in my fealty line. Like there's no 50%, right? I'm all in. So as soon as I was back in fighting, I was back in everything for the SCA. I would say within 9 months, I was taking over as Principality Marshal for the Principality of the Mist, right? And helping out with all kinds of other things because that's just fundamentally who I am, right? I'm a person that makes things happen. Like service is easy for me. I got my pelican long before I was knighted, and that's just because I think that's a fundamental part of my personality. Whereas learning to fight was hard, very hard.
So how long did it take you? How did you hook up with Ob? And
Oh man,
how did that happen? How did that come about?
So I'd known Ob since college. Ob actually went to Humboldt State University as well. He was there before I was, and before it was the College of St. Brendan. So we had a lot of people in common. Sir Eleanor Frostfelg, who was the local knight up in the area, was Ob's knight when he got knighted, right? And so like we had this connection, everything. I'd met Ob, he'd come to visit a few times. Thorfinn and I got to be good friends during my college time. He was in Chico, I was in Humboldt, just drive across 299, right? We'd go to each other's events and all that. And so I got to know Ob then. So then when I get back into the SCA, of course, I'm hanging out with Thorfinn, which means I'm hanging out with everybody Thorfinn hangs out with, right? It's Ob, and it's Helgi, and it's Stephen at Greenwood, and it's Ragnar Beowulf, right? It's the whole group, all the people who we know as the Fellowship of the Archangels now. I don't think they were yet at that point. And so, right, we would hang out at Ob's house. Ob dated Karn at one point, and Karn and my wife are very good friends, right? So there were just all these connections. And for all that people that would meet Ob and that would meet me and would say to me, I don't understand, right? I can't see the connection. If you knew Ob, right, he was a larger than life personality. He passed away a few years ago, unfortunately. And he's a larger than life personality and could be very blunt and frank in his language, especially if he had a strong opinion. And for some reason, because I didn't necessarily act the exact same way, people couldn't understand. What they didn't see is that underneath the hood, Ob and I were basically the same person that would do anything for any of the people that we cared about, right? And that's how we connected. So
Yeah, that makes total sense
Yeah.
to me. I have a really funny Ob story.
well, tell
My
me.
very first event was 30th year, and
Oh yeah.
I was in sort of a Rob Roy tablecloth skirt and silk pirate shirt in a
Yes.
grocery store with the woman that brought me into the SCA, who was also in full garb. And this guy came up to us and started asking us, are you in a play? You know, blah, blah, blah. And the woman that I was with said, oh no. And she started explaining the SCA. He looks at her and he says, oh, you're those Satanists. And started to like go at her. And I went, oh, I'm out. And I walked away. And she just kind of like literally gibbered, like she didn't know what to say. And he got her right to the point where she was so uncomfortable. And then he said, just kidding. And then he introduced himself as Duke, somebody else, not Ob.
Oh, probably Duke Jada Starfall. We used to do that one frequently. We'd either be Duke Jada Starfall or Sir Stephen of Pembroke. That's who we'd introduce ourselves as, especially when you're at Pennsic. Nobody knows who you are.
I think it was Jade. So my Ob story, it was pretty funny.
That sounds exactly like the kind of trolling he would do.
Yeah.
Right? Definitely. Many of us met him that way. I would say my first exposure to what Ob was at a Miss Sinagua War when I was in college, and him and his crew came along and they were singing all of the dirty rugby songs and stuff that Ob was famous for bringing in the SCA, and all of those things that, eventually I became a part of, though at, I don't know how old, I was probably still a teenager, and I'm just in shock. I'm like, this is amazing. This is happening. This is the best thing ever. I didn't even drink at that point. It didn't matter. It was amazing. So yeah, that was my first exposure to the larger than life personality that was Duke Obadiah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So when you squired to Ob, did you sort of start to relearn fighting, or how did that go?
Yeah, that's a great question. And short answer is yes. The
long answer.
The long answer, which is better, I'm sure. So I had been hanging out with Ob and that whole crew for a couple of years, and I had gotten back in and had been practicing enough. I was feeling at least like I was back to my previous level of competency. And I was thinking in my head, okay, I think I should squire to somebody again. And I had a mental list. There were 5 knights on that list of people who I both respected enough and felt had a style that would mesh with how I learn, so that I could, correctly do that, which is, I admit, a skill I didn't have at 18, right? I had no idea how to do anything like that. And Ob was on that list, and we had been hanging out. He came up to me. It was the weekend. It was October Crown 2003. It was the same weekend my good friend Sir Dimitri got knighted. And funny enough, it ended up being, though, after that, it was the same weekend that I was offered membership in the Order of the Pelican. And he came up to me and said, hey, we talked about a little, I want you to be my squire, because that's the way he is, right? He didn't say, do you want to be my squire? He told me he wanted me to be squire.
This is happening.
Yeah. And I was okay with that, right? Huge amount of respect for him as a fighter and as a human being. All the other knights that I also had the same level of respect for, we hadn't clicked in that same way yet. And so it was just, for me, it was the right thing to go with Ob. And so it was Saturday of Crown. He said that. He banged out a red ring belt for me. which is funny because I'm not sure I ever wore that, because at that point I was well past ring belts and I liked really cool buckles and belt fittings.
You were too.
Yeah, so I don't think I wore it. And that was great. And then the next day we're running a William Marshall tournament, and some stuff happened, and I had to go off with the king, and we had to go solve some shenanigans, not fun shenanigans on site, the kind of things you have to do. Oh, I forgot to tell you, at this point in time, I was Kingdom Seneschal as well, which is why I got pulled off to go help solve these problems. And came back, did all the fighting and everything, and Pelican Council's going on. I'm not paying attention. Somebody comes over and says, hey, the king needs you. Well, I'm Seneschal, so of course the king needs me, right? It's the Seneschal thing. And I go in, and it was Duke Ragnar's first reign, Jarl Ragnar's first reign, and he's like, yeah, I want to offer you Pelican, right? So in the same weekend, I squired to somebody who was one of my best friends, and then I got offered the Pelican. So I'd say that's winning, right? On a lot of levels at that point.
A good October crown for you.
Yeah, a lot of adjustment to make.
Hold on 1 second. Buster, what are you doing?
I'm glad I'm not the only one having dog problems tonight.
Okay, 1 second.
My dog is super needy tonight.
I've got a cat visitor.
You know how it is with pets and with children.
Yes.
I don't have children. I do have nephews and nieces. So you know how when the sound changes and you know something's going on? Yeah, a piece of trash had fallen off the counter on the ground and he was licking it. So
No.
I just had to get that out of the way.
So Merrick has a question for you.
Yes.
He wants to know.
Is he going to troll me?
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay, good.
It's a good one. When did you find out that you have the best smile in the SCA?
Well, okay, I'm going to tell a story around that.
Excellent.
So I know I have resting thinker face, and that's part of who I am. I also, because of my time working with the college group and doing a lot of other things in my life, I wanted to make sure that I felt like I appeared to people as the welcoming person I felt like I was. And so I started making a conscious effort to make sure I was smiling when I was talking to people. I was like, that's just like, I want to be welcoming. I want to, I went from I was College Herald, and then I was College Marshal and Seneschal and all that, right? And recruiting was a big thing. And so I started the smiling thing pretty early in my life. I would say that it really hit ahead when social media took off, and all of a sudden you start seeing more and more pictures of yourself everywhere.
Yep.
I've got an ego like everybody else does, and I have a way that I would like to have myself be seen in the way I'd like to present myself. And I decided that was one of the ways I wanted to present myself. Now, as to whether or not that smile is the best smile in the SCA, Merrick, checks in the mail. I love you.
Merrick has declared it, so it is so.
It is absolutely true. I think that probably happened because what started as something that I wanted to do to show that I was open just became a reflection of who I was on the inside. And so that becomes infectious to other people, and they notice it, right? I'm reflecting out what I want to get back in the world, and that's smiles and welcoming and everything that I fundamentally believe the SCA was for me and hopefully is for other people. And so I'm super honored that Merrick thinks I have the best smile in there. So he's not the only one. I've heard that from a number of other people who I both have a lot of respect and major crushes on. So
Is he both?
is what?
Is he both?
Is he both?
And a
Of
crush?
course he's both. Have you seen him?
Well, I don't know if I've ever met him in person, but yes.
Good looking human. Can't argue that.
He's got a pretty nice smile himself.
Yeah.
Yes, he
that's
does. We were
accurate.
talking about that the other day.
You were watching his drunk karaoke and thinking he had a good drunk smile.
Always a good time.
So I think it's really cool that you used pictures of yourself on social media to make yourself more approachable, because I think as peers, a lot of us go through that. Like, we get feedback or something like, oh, you seem so unapproachable or whatever, and you took the reins and did it without getting the feedback, and I think that's super cool, because I had to go through the same thing, because I think I'm the most approachable person in the world. Apparently I am not. So,
Yeah, yeah, our inner
but
person, our outer person.
I think that's super cool. And I think that's something that like most people can do is just, you kind of take a glance at those photos of yourself that you probably don't want to look at and see what you're portraying.
Yep.
Right.
Absolutely.
So
I made a conscious effort to kind of reboot myself. I don't know, probably 6 times in my life from junior high school on, where I said, hey, I've gone far enough down this path. I've learned enough that I like or don't like certain aspects of things, and then change up who I am. And one of those inflection points was absolutely when I got my Pelican, right? That's a big inflection point for most people in the SCA, regardless when they get their first, maybe only peerage. And it was for me. I started having way more focused and conscious thoughts about who I was and how I wanted to present myself. I made a decision based on just some conversations with other friends that were peers at the time, that I was at that point, from then on, I was not going to leave my tent at an event unless I felt I presented myself in a peer-like way. And that didn't mean I had to be fully put together, right? And all that kind of stuff. But it did mean a certain thing to me, and that may have been different at different times. It meant that I was maybe, I wasn't going to show up I wasn't going to walk out in my jeans. Maybe that was one of the things, right? And that was on me. I never said that anybody else had to meet my standard. That was just the standard I set for myself that I wanted to. That's how I wanted to reflect peerages.
I know for me, when I was laureled, it was this sudden, like, I had to suddenly turn all of the expectations I had of laurels on myself. And I found myself so wanting. I was like, oh my God, I have so much work to do right now. And
not the end of the journey, is it?
no, and I'm still working. I'm still trying to get
Same. Yeah, every day.
Yep.
I don't stop being a knight during the week, right?
right.
Doesn't happen.
Right. So Ross asked, what is something you would like to focus on when the SCA opens back up?
That's great. And exactly the kind of question I would expect from Ross. So, being who he is.
Ross face.
Yeah, I miss that guy. I haven't seen him in too long. So, I haven't thought about it a huge amount. The pandemic has been interesting in a lot of ways, and I started a new job this summer that I've definitely been very focused on. So I haven't given a huge amount of thought to my total direction when I come back. I do know that I want to reboot the Tournament of Virtues. So which is a monthly practice tournament that we run down here that is based on the Cropode tournament from the West. And I want to reboot that. We were talking about making some changes anyway when the pandemic hit. So I want to reboot that. I want to go train with Master Paul and get him to the point where his prowess is knightly, right? So that the council can have a good conversation about him. I don't know what the exact, I don't think that it's an office right now, right? I don't think it's an official position is the thing I would hold. I do like being an ambassador for the SCA. Something I very much enjoy doing when I go to events. If I see anybody at an event that I don't recognize, I make it a point to go over and introduce myself and say hi and meet them. There were a lot of people that did that for me when I was younger. Some of those people became my heroes because they were so great about that. And
I think that's really brave. I'm always afraid that I'm going to go introduce myself to someone I've met like 10 times and they're going to think I'm an asshole.
that's totally fair. And I've probably done it as well. I know I've done it. I've gotten good over the years at owning it when I'm bad at that. It's like, hey, nice to meet you. They go, we met before. I said, well, that's on me for forgetting because
just roll with it.
that's on me.
Yeah.
Totally my fault. I'm gonna do my best not to forget again.
I love that though. Like what do you kind of use as an approach though?
Sure. I think it can depend on the context. Certainly if they are hanging around the fighting field in any way, right? That's an easy approach to make. Hey, looks like you're watching the fighting. I haven't met you before. I'd just like to introduce myself. And, are there any questions I can answer for you? I like to start with that. I'm a giant fan of knowing about people. I love origin stories. I want to hear the same kind of questions you asked me at the beginning, right? How did you get the SCA, right? How did you find this thing? Oh, I love that. I love all that stuff. I want to know how you became Iron Man and Iron Man. So, right?
Both too, which is why we're doing this.
Yeah, I love that. And so I'll start with that. I want them to, I don't need to tell them about me. They don't need to hear that. I want to hear about them. And then I want them to ask me questions for things that are pertinent to them, right? I try and treat them the way I would want to be treated if I was coming into a new environment where I don't know anything. I think, how would I want to be treated? I would like to be welcomed, and I would like somebody who is willing to ask my questions if I had them and be fine if I didn't. So that's what I try and do with it. And certainly if it's fighting, I could talk fighting all day. The first rule of medieval sword fight club is that you have to talk about medieval sword fight club. So
all the time.
yeah, all the time. I cannot help myself. Though I'm happy to as well, if they're interested in something else, since I've been in the SCA for a long time and I know a lot of people, as soon as they say the thing they're interested in, I can go, oh, hold on a second. Hey, Master Paul, can you come over here? Hey, Sir Helgi, can you come over here, right? Whoever it happens to be that I know that does that thing, whatever it happens to be, can you talk to this person, right? And if I don't know, I'm only 1 degree away from somebody who does know. So I'm going to find out. I'm going to find that person. I am 100% okay if I help you get into the SCA and then I am not the person that you hang out with all the time because the thing you want to do is not the thing I want to do. I'm super happy if you found your tribe, right? And so I want to do that with other new people, help them find their tribe. It's hard. You're standing there, you're new, even if you're in garb, or you don't know a lot of people, you don't know how to have these conversations. We're using titles and they're saluting and people are hitting each other and the court gets called, right? All this stuff. So I want to help other people understand these things.
And it's a lot. And I think that's a great way to put it of, I'm here, I'm a great resource. I'm your safe place to land if you need it, but let's find your tribe because I may not necessarily be your cup of tea.
That's totally fine. Right?
Yeah.
I will not be the person you want to be with if you are super interested in medieval cooking. I think it's fascinating. I'm also allergic to like 97 billion things on the planet, right? Including foods. And so that's not my thing. I do have some friends that are cooking laurels though, and I'm going to put you together with them in about 2 seconds so you guys can nerd out on that because that's going to make me happy if you're doing that. And then I'll just step away. I'll walk away.
So you said earlier that it was sort of a struggle for you to learn how to fight. Can you talk about that struggle a little bit and how you parlay that into how you teach?
Sure. So I came up through what you would call the SCA School of Hard Knocks when I was younger, right? It was very much, we're going to put you in armor and we're going to hit you. And if you stick around, we might teach you something, right? That was like the default way of doing things, which I'm very glad that we've evolved past that in our history. And, I made it through it because I had great friends, I had good support groups and all that stuff. I didn't feel like I necessarily learned a lot in the early parts. And when I came back into fighting, so I'd gotten to a certain decent competent level where if I'd focused on it, I might have been able to compete for a missed cornet or something at that point, at least according to the opinion of some of my friends. I don't know if I had the same opinion of myself at that point in time. And then I took the time off and I came back. And one of the hardest things, and I feel like it was a big part of my evolution as a human as well as a teacher, was learning how to swallow my ego. Learning to understand that regardless of what you've done before in the SCA or maybe in another sport or something where you've excelled, you're at this level right now, and you just have to accept that, right? It doesn't matter if you were at this level before, right? I'm here now. And then I have to figure out how I work to that level. And I think that was a big part of personal growth for me, to hit that level of challenge. And I think it was because it was around physical stuff. Around intellectual challenges, those were things that for my entire life I had just conquered, right? I had done well in school when I wanted to, and did fine when I didn't care about school. I had done very well in the early part of my career as an engineer in Silicon Valley, and I just knew how to solve problems. I knew how to figure things out. And even though I had done some sports, I didn't know how to do fighting, right? I didn't know what the mental model was I needed in order to make that happen. And a lot of my friends offered a lot of great things that worked for them, and unfortunately didn't work for me because we're different people, right? So they maybe could embrace a more aggressive kind of thing. Thorfinn has a thing which you might have heard where he used to say back in the day, he'd step on the field and he'd look at that guy and he'd think, F that guy, right? Like that was his thing, right? It's like, I don't hate that guy or anything, but I'm gonna beat him up right now and then I'm gonna walk off the field. And I tried that and it just didn't work for me, right? It's not how I go. So finding what that right mechanism was took a lot of trial and error. And fortunately, Duke Obadiah was professionally and mundanely a school teacher and a high school football and wrestling coach. So he had a lot of tools in his toolkit to help me get there. And when we started combining those tools with other tools and other of the knights that I was hanging out with at the time, we managed to find the right ways to articulate things that I could then put them into practice, right? So it couldn't be F that guy. I tried that. That didn't work for me. What worked for me at one point was go throw 30% more shots, 20% harder. Like, oh, okay, yeah, no, I get that. I get that. I can put that, right? That's in a box right now. I know how that goes, right? And so what I took away from that, and what's a big part of my teaching style now, is that I have to get to know that student if I really want to help them improve. I have to understand their background. I have to understand what they've done before, what makes sense in context and what doesn't, how I help them get context so that they can get better at these things. And I think that going through that, that long, arduous journey where I figured those kinds of things out, I developed my language for how I talk about fighting. I also have a very good brain for watching someone do something and then being able to break it down into its component parts, right? You just did a thing that was actually 6 individual steps, and here's how they go, so that I can then teach someone else, which was very helpful when Thorfinn was really ramping up his skill and he won his first crown and all of those things. I could help him figure out what he was doing so he could repeat that over and over again. I couldn't do what he was doing. That's okay. But I could help him figure it out. And I feel like I could always challenge him in a way, because of that, I could challenge him in a way that would get him fired up. So we would always warm up together before crowns I would get him fired up and he'd get me fired up. And then we'd go out and, he'd win and I'd go to the 5th or 6th round or whatever it was. Whatever that happened to be at that time.
It's important to find that person though that does that for you.
It is. Yes. Yeah. Who can get you fired up in the right way? Bob had so many little, he's a coach, right? He had all the anecdotes and all of the ways of teaching you how to fight. And we talked about it very frankly because I was in my 30s at the point I squired to him, as opposed to his original batch of squires, right? Helgi and Kolber and Thorfinn, who were all squired around the same time and all got knighted roughly around the same time within a year or two of each other. And ish, I think. And they all, you spoke to them like they were teenagers, young 20-somethings, right? He and I had very different conversations because of that. So I don't think that I got the kind of just do what I say kind of thing that they likely got when they were young squires coming up, right? We would have conversations about it and he explained to me, and I'd be like, all right, I'm going to do that thing, right? I'm opting into this.
Well, and you're so cerebral. I think that you had to have it that way.
I think so too. Yeah.
Rachel wants to know, do you feel that because you are more naturally collaborative, that killer competitiveness wasn't as natural for you?
Yes, I agree. Yeah. My competitiveness is about me being better than me yesterday and me and my team winning. It's never about me actually winning. I'm almost more happy when one of my students does great, or one of the people I mentor at work gets promoted or does something awesome. I'm happier about that every time than I am about any of my individual successes. So it definitely made it hard to figure out how do I compete on this level. And over the years, I've definitely figured it out, right? I've done fairly decent in a number of tournaments. I've done a semifinal at a crown, and I feel like I'm a pretty good fighter. Do I have whatever it takes to go all the way? I don't know. Maybe I'll find out at some point. So I do know that I enjoy who I am as a fighter, that I've figured that out over the years, as I figured out how to make this a collaborative thing as opposed to a competitive thing for me.
I think that's really important to get comfortable with who you are as a fighter and to embrace it, because I think without that, like, you're always sort of second guessing what your path is and where you're going. And you have such a well, it sounds very relaxed to me, attitude about, hey, if I get there, cool, I'm just having fun, right? Like, and this is who I am, and it's all good.
Yeah.
And I think that's awesome.
Yeah. Now, I don't want to misportray anything. I like to win.
Well, yes.
It's fun, right? Beating your friends and watching them fall over. That's good times. I enjoy that. It is not, for me, the primary motivating factor, though. Yeah, there's something really satisfying about killing one of your friends. Or getting killed by them. That's pretty satisfying too, right? When they juke you out of your shoes and you're like, oh no, this is gonna be miserable, and it's on video. Yeah, that's still fun.
I think for me, like, the real pleasure is executing something really well. And especially when a Duke friend or something says, oh my God, how did you do that? And I'm like, I win.
Yes.
Let's just stop for today.
There was a crown tournament, Mumble, years ago. I think I was at Squire to Ob at that point, and Duke Radnor was fighting in the tournament, and I drew him in the fourth or fifth round. I ended up against him, and we'd been fighting since I was a teenager, right? I'd been fighting with friends. I'd been fighting him a long time, and I came out against him, and we just had this super great fight. He beat me. I felt super great coming off the field, though. I was like, he didn't just one-shot me, right? I made him work for that stuff. I touched him a couple times, not hard enough. That's the way that goes. And after the fight, he comes up to me and he says, I don't know who you are right there. You scared me coming out. Like, you stepped onto the field and you were just bang, like in my face, making me work, all these things. And it was such a great feeling to have somebody that you respected tell you, you've hit another level, whatever that level is, right? You've hit that next spot where you are now officially a threat to me all the time. It's like, yes. Right? That's a celebration moment. One of your heroes tells you that.
You gonna do the merit question?
I thought you would do it.
Okay.
Oh, bring it on.
What advice do you have for aspiring laurels of untraditional paths, culinary, vocal, research, etc.?
That's interesting. So I don't feel that I'm super artistic in the laurel way. My creativity comes in service, right? Figuring out how to solve problems as opposed to creating super amazing works of art, right? Whether they're ephemeral or lasting. Probably the biggest advice I would have for someone, regardless of their path they're on, is don't hyper focus. Right? Yes, you want to get deep and good at whatever that thing is. You also don't ever know where inspiration is going to strike, and you don't know who is going to help you along that path. And so making sure that you're continuing to engage in the entirety of the SCA to some degree. And I understand, when I was fighting really hard, when I was working to get myself knighted, right? I wanted that level of prowess. I was going to 3 practices a week and fighting every weekend, right? It was the thing I was doing. And I totally understand that. I still also, at that point, I made it a time, I think that's when I was Kingdom Seneschal, right? I was Earl Marshal during that time as well, because there were other parts of the SCA I need to engage in. And that can be hard because you could feel like you're losing your path, you're losing the direction that you think you were going. Just remember that it's a long journey, right? As long as your trend line that you're going for is up and to the right, you got a couple of bounces here or there, right, where you spike up high and then you trough down low. And it's going to happen to all of us. If you're making that kind of continuous improvement towards the thing that you want to go to, then I think you're doing the right thing.
Should we look at some pictures?
Oh yeah, let's look at some good ones. You got some good? Did you pull some good ones?
I think so.
Okay,
The pressure.
Yeah, I hope so.
I'll find some good ones too if you don't.
It's so weird to
Oh yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yes. Okay, so that's me, the small one. The big one, that's Sir Bjorn, who I mentioned a couple times already. And we are wearing what was affectionately known as the brick wall tabard. So Sir Theodoricus Skane had that field treatment on his coat of arms. And so those of us that were his squires, we wore his field treatment, right? His livery. That's what we wore. And so it was myself and Sir Bjorn, and then Sir Aaron of Buckminster, who's in Northshield now. He was out in the West originally too. It was the three of us, and we would always wear these surcoats, these brick surcoats, and we became very well known for it, whether we were in armor and on the field, or if we were just doing whatever it is that needed to be done. So Sir Bjorn is also a master of Pelican and a master of the Laurel in calligraphy, right? So we had some very different skills, right? Sir Aaron, Knight in a Pelican as well, and has been on the bod and everything like that, right? So we were well known for doing both fun things and service and fighting in some shenanigans, probably. I wish I still had that tabard. I probably made 2 or 3 of them over the time I was Theodoric Squire, because I had some leg armor at the time that had some pretty good edges on it. And so as I would get that left leg hit, that left leg of the surcoat would just get torn up over a year or 18 months or something like that. And I'd have to make another one again. So, yeah, I don't think I have any of them anymore. I think I still have that favor that's on my belt right there, though. That's the first favor I wore. And I'm pretty sure I still have that in my stuff. Oh, yes.
Wow, you did have some gorgeous hair. Look at that.
I had a lion's mane of hair. There's probably not a huge number of SCA pictures with it down. I frequently wore it back in a ponytail. At this point, I think I cut it to like chin length. This is going to be the spring of 1999. Sayun and I had spent a couple years living in Dublin, Ireland, and we had just moved back. And it was the crown where Uther was knighted, both Uther and William of the Two Hawks, who were part of the mercenary unit we were in at the time. And so we showed up and we had to borrow garb. All of our stuff was still on a boat coming back from Ireland, everything. We had nothing. And so borrowed a bunch of everything except that belt, I think I borrowed from one of my friends.
Sarah says she thinks it was 2000, probably.
Okay, I'm gonna go with that. That's very likely.
Aw.
There's my girl.
She's the best.
She really is. So you can kind of see the medallion, the Pelican medallion that she's wearing there. So that is actually a collaboration between Duke Obadiah and Sir Helgi. So Sir Helgi is a master of the Laurel for bead making and glass work. So they made Sayun a stained glass pelican medallion. Okay. So it's a silver cut pelican, and then with stained glass behind it. So then when you hold it up to the sun, the stained glass comes behind it. And I know it's one of her most prized possessions. And this was at the Providora. I don't know if it was, I think it was, yeah, it was probably Providora, first or second. No, hold on. If it was Providora, Dennis would be holding my banner. Dennis is my squire. So this is going to be a different event. I don't know what event this is.
So you said you met her in the SCA, is that right?
I did.
Did you guys have a good meet story?
Do we? Do we have a good meet story?
Will you tell it?
It was at a West Kingdom June crown at the King City site, which I don't think the Kingdom uses any longer. And crown had happened. There was big parties going on everywhere, and I was walking from one party to the next party. And as I'm walking kind of into the entrance to this next party, there's like a permanent picnic table outside there, and there's a couple of women sitting on the picnic table chatting. And as people, I'm behind another group of people coming up with my friends. And as I'm walking up, I see these people stop, some interaction happens, and then I walk up. Well, it turns out what happens is you walk up and they say, halt, we have to judge your butt. So I turn around and they grab my butt and then they judge me like a Russian figure skating judge. I think I did pretty well. And it turns out that I was the only person that said, huh, I think I'm going to stop and talk to these ladies. And I stopped to talk to Seun, and I'm pretty sure we've been together ever since. Yeah.
Always talk to the girls that are grabbing the butts.
Always. I don't know how anybody doesn't. That seems ludicrous. Yeah.
Thank you
So,
for sharing that.
He was, we were both young. We were very young at the point, as you do. I think I was, hold on, I would have been 23 and she was 20. Oh my God. So, we were kids. I'm still a kid at heart, obviously. I hit my friends with sticks. Oh, there's my pelicaning. So there's Ragnar as king. My friend Harold, who was a very experienced herald in the kingdom. And it was kind of funny because he was essentially became known as Harold the Herald because of who he was. And he was great. And he did my ceremony there. That was a pretty amazing experience for me.
And I have a ton of these pictures. I got all happy.
Yeah.
So.
Oh yeah. So that's our friend Stefan and his mom. Sarah had worked with Stefan at one point when he was a teenager, and she was a veterinary tech. He was interning at a veterinary clinic where Sarah was working, and we hit it off with Stefan, totally our kind of nerd and everything. And he wanted to do the SCA, so we got him the SCA, and he ended up squiring to Duke Alden of Wolverton and everything. And because I was getting this big accolade in the SCA, he came and he brought his parents. That's his mom right there, Blanche, with us in the photo. So I was super happy that they were all able to come at that point. Man, I haven't seen that coronet in a while. That's in a box somewhere. It's my court barony.
Is it red or is that just like glare?
I think it's probably out of focus.
Okay.
That's gonna be my guess. It was a darkened hall with early digital cameras and things with all these photos being taken at this point. Thorfinn was one of the spokesmen at my pelicaning because he and I have been friends. Shoot, we must have met in 1990, right? So we've been friends for 30 years, and I would say pretty darn close friends for 20. So yeah, it was. And then there's Ob right there too.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And then your other speaker.
Oh, that's Sir Aaron, right? Who had been my squire brother in the early days. He had already been knighted a few years, a number of years, maybe the year before, actually, he got knighted. May have even been that year at Penzance that he got knighted. I don't remember when he got knighted. And I asked him to speak at my ceremony as well, because we've been friends for so long. So he's a really good human being if you've never met him. And that in the back corner there, standing up against the wall, that's Sir Theodoric. That's my first knight right back there. So he unfortunately passed away in the, I want to say the early 2000s, early to mid 2000s as well, unfortunately. Wow. It's the first time I've really realized that both the people I've squired to have passed away. It's unfortunately. That's Stefan's dad.
Sorry.
That's okay. These are great. It's great to look at these. I haven't looked at these in years. That's my banner hanging behind us. So my good friend, Master Odvar, when I got offered, he said, I want to make you your banner for your ceremony. And he is, if you haven't ever met him, Master Odvar is that laurel that will take anything and turn it into art. Like he is just, that's how his brain works.
That's Colin, right?
Yeah, that's Colin.
Okay, yeah, he's amazing.
Yeah, he just turned anything into art. So he hand sewed that whole banner. He hand twisted all of the cord that is used on the banner. And what you can't see on the bottom edge is with the bottom pole, there are then 6 other cords with warrior rings hanging from the banner. So we were all, at the time, we were all reading, shoot, which series was that? Same guy who wrote The Winter King, right? Wrote a bunch of other series, and he talked about warrior rings, and we found these really cool, like wrought iron rings, and everybody was giving them to everybody else. It was a big thing, part of the culture then. So he hung a bunch of them to be the weights on the bottom of my banner
That's
at that point.
cool.
Yeah, anything he touches turns to art. It's amazing. That is right there to the left. That's Sir John Theophilus, who is also in the Order of the Pelican. And something happened for the ceremony, and the medallion that was supposed to be there for whatever reason didn't show up. And when they called for the medallion, everybody looked around like, oh shit, where's the medallion? And so John pulled the medallion off his neck and gave it to me. And it's very similar to this one, because I had this one made to look like it. And you can't really tell in video, but what it is, glass over silver. The glass is a magnifier, and etched on the back of the silver bezel here is a pelican and its piety, and then some blood drop beads. So Helgi and Ob made this one for me because I took that one that John gave me, and then when Sir Bjorn got his pelican a number of years later, I gave it to him in his ceremony. So
I love how meaningful regalia gets and the stories that can come from it.
the chain of our line, which came from Ob and has gone to all of us, and now has gone to the squires in our line that have gotten knighted. We call it the chain of virtue and vice. And it's interlinked brass, kind of like box chain. And then there are big pewter, I don't have it anymore. Sir Yannick has it, I think, because he was the last one to get knighted with. That's how it works. Goes to whoever gets knighted with and then gets handed off to the next person, right? It's got these big pewter links on it. And on the links, on one side is written a virtue, and on the other side is written the corresponding vice. And so it's a party game chain, right? You grab the chain, you spin it around somebody's neck, whoever has it, you grab the link and you look at it, and that's whatever the thing is that you're supposed to be working on at that point in time, whether it's a virtue or a vice, whichever one it happens to be. So I can't wait till I can hand that off to one of my squires at some point. That'd be great.
Awesome.
Yeah, regalia, I love regalia. Man, look at that lack of gray in my hair. It's amazing. It shows the most, the gray shows the most in my sideburns, I gotta say. So when I see a profile shot of me from when I'm younger, that's when I really notice that I'm gray now. So, Ragnar and Sky, great friends.
And there we go.
Yeah. Oh, so Helgi is wearing, as you can see, the laurel cloak right there, because that was the day that he got his laurel for glassmaking. He got his laurel that day. I got my pelican, and I feel like that is also the day Sir Bjorn got knighted. Whew, man, it all blends together. He asked, I was the herald for his ceremony. He wanted me to be his kingside herald for his knighting because we've been friends for so long.
Awesome.
I feel like that was all the same event. And then that's Ugo behind us.
Yeah, I was gonna say he's doing duck face back there.
As he does. Oh man.
He's going, ooh, he's looking at something.
And looking good doing it, right? Whatever he's wearing, he just looks good.
Always.
Always.
So tell me about these cloaks. Are these kingdom cloaks that
Yeah, these are West Kingdom regalia. I don't know if the provenance of these exact ones and their age, I couldn't recall this time. I bet somebody who may be watching now is going to remember. They are passed on to whoever the newest member of the order is, and then they're required to take care of it and bring it to the next elevation so that they can be placed on the next order of the member. Unlike some other kingdoms where you would then add to the cloak, in this particular case, for the West, you don't, right? They just stay as they are and get passed on. This one may have been one of the, I don't know if it's the first one, but I feel like the one I was wearing was one that had been around for a while. Like 10 to 15 years or something like that when I got a chance to wear it. And it's great when you wear it, and except when you get your peerage at an indoor event and it's super warm and it's like a super heavy cotton velvet cloak lined, and it's just, I melted. I wore it for a couple of photos and then I had to take it off.
fair, totally fair. We don't have those cloaks.
No, every kingdom's got their own kind of traditions and regalia, and I think that's great. Oh yeah. So this is the night after, the morning after my knighting vigil, and this picture was taken by Viscountess Esmeralda in the West, who everybody probably knows is taking just amazing photos. She's just great at this. So I had vigiled all night long until there was no one left that wanted to talk to me. And then I stayed up with my team of people that decided they were going to stay up all night with me. And then we stayed up till dawn. And then at dawn, we were on, this is the West Kingdom Beltane site, frequently referred to as the Sheep's Ranch in Cloverdale. And it, at the time, wasn't quite as droughty yet. And so there was still a running creek going through the site. And it had been a tradition for my entire line that you would bathe in one way or another after vigiling all night, right? Very medieval, right? We'd bathe. And then some of us would then scourge ourselves with our belts while we were in the water. So I took off my outer clothes because they were very nice vigiling clothes that Mistress Aronach and a number of my other friends had made for me. And I wasn't going to wear those in the water. So I went into my, medieval underwear. And then while I kneeled in the water and contemplated things and then scourged myself with my belt, which fortunately was just leather, no fittings on that belt. So that's not a big deal. Duchess Maven read in Latin a litany of saints while I was doing this. And it was the most medieval moment I have had in the SCA. And I've had some really good medieval moments at various different events for various different ways. And this was just amazing. And I've always been so grateful to Esmeralda for she went to bed. She got up early because she knew we were doing this and she wanted to get up and capture it. And I really appreciate that she did that.
Awesome. That's a great shot. So I think the rest of the photos I have, this is another knighting thing.
Oh my goodness.
And I didn't get a picture of the picture.
Okay.
So you can just talk about it now if you want.
Yeah, absolutely. I could probably pull up a picture of the picture if we needed to. So this is on the back of a framed picture. And the picture is a piercework belt that Bjorn gave me at my knighting, that Ob gave him, that Bjorn took to England and took a picture of it on the tomb of William Marshall. And then he gave me the picture of that framed and the belt at my knighting. And the picture hangs on the wall right next to my knighting scroll. And it inspired me so much that I have made a point now, whenever I have traveled to Europe, and I was able to travel a lot for work over the last decade or so, I take pieces of my regalia and I make sure I take them to historic sites so that if the opportunity arises for me to do the same thing for someone, I have something that not just our SCA history also has touched medieval history that they can then have. So
Super cool.
Yeah. I'd forgotten about the scroll part on the back, right? I haven't looked at the back of this in forever because it's hanging in a frame on my wall.
So the rest.
Oh, yes.
So I want to ask you, do you want to show some more pictures of your knighting now and we can come back to these, or do you want to go through these?
These are great. I'm happy to talk about these.
Okay.
So this is at a tournament known as Aaronwood. So our friends, Sir Alderon and Mistress Aronach, own property in the Sierra foothills, and they have built a replica, not to full scale, a replica based on the tournament field in René d'Anjou's Book of the Tournament, right? The big illustration that's in the frontispiece, and they built that. And every year, until this year because of COVID, for the last, it might be 15 or 18 years now, they will hold a tournament on their land every year. It's an invite tournament, and everybody comes in their best, and we do some really amazing fighting tournaments with these permanent barriers that are set there. We do both melee and single combat. We do a huge amount of matched weapon, and then there's a lot of feasting and what we like to call "I love you, man" time that happens at night. So they get coins minted every year, into unique coins for this event, and we all get these coins. And part of what you get is you get some coins that are called the chivalry tokens, and you're supposed to give these away to people that are at the event for whatever reason, and then say why you're giving it to them, right? Thus the "I love you, man" time that we get to. And this is one of my favorite events. I was really looking forward to going to it this year. I had missed a number of years since I moved down to CAID because of life, the universe, and everything. And we were able to go back in 2019 and go to the tournament. And it was such a great time. And I was really looking forward to going back this year. And obviously that didn't happen. That's the way it goes. Yeah, there's some fierce fighters in this lineup right here, right? On the far left there, that was Viscount Brand from the west, right? And then Ob, Thorfinn, Evander, Sir Connell, Sir Geoffrey Matthias on the far right, right? And then Mistress Aislinn, and dang it, I haven't seen people in so long, and social media has ruined me for their SCA names. Oh, is Will, sorry. And Will there with the pole arm. Man, we were a killer squad. We crushed that year. That was a lot of fun.
Awesome. Okay. Are we ready for the next one?
Yeah, go right ahead.
Okay.
Oh, this is Estrella War, I believe, 2 or 3 years ago. This was our encampment. That's my coat of arms on that banner flying there. It's a red Cairo on a white field. That's our pavilion, our sunshade, which has the nom de plume of the procrastination station. Right? It's where you show up and do nothing and drink all day. So
Nice.
I thought it was a neat shot of your camp.
it is a great shot. I like this one a lot. Ah, and here are my students. So on the left there, that's Dennis of New Forest, and then Master Paul Fitzdennis and Natalia on the far right. And they are all my squires or students. And it really sucks that I haven't seen them in person in quite some time. But I think we're all going through that right now. Paul and Dennis and I were able to do a fun thing in December. Paul decided that we weren't hanging out enough, so he got us rum advent calendars. And then for 24 days in December, we got together every night on a Zoom call and sampled rum together, and then shared our thoughts with people. And that was great to be able to hang out with them.
What a cool gift.
Yeah. So as you can see right here, there's a height maximum that you're allowed to be if you're my squire. So far. Paul's the tall squire. He's 5'8". He's by far the tall squire. I'm 5'7", and we work down from there. And I understand why you might search out somebody to squire to that is of a similar build to you, because there are some things that you maybe are only going to learn in a certain way from somebody that's built like you, right? I can't teach you how to be big. I certainly can teach you how to fight my way if you're around my height, right? Where I fight against so many giants in this game. Everybody's huge. Rifkin, you know that. Everybody's taller than we are.
I never feel short until I see pictures of myself.
I know.
Next to other people, and I'm like, oh.
Yep. So Sir Daniel Drake, who's been a long-time friend of mine as well, there's a picture somewhere of me and him, and he is actually more than a foot taller than me, and I look like a hobbit. Like he should put me under his arm and run to Isengard, because yeah, that's what I look. And he's a big fella anyway, so that's when I realize I'm small. Oh my goodness. West Frontier War, Gold Beach site. That is the year, that would have been 2012, I think. That's when Master Odvar received his laurel.
A lot of kicking ass in that picture.
There really is, right? So if we go left to right, Stephen of Greenwood, Helgi Olsen, Odvar, Ob in the back, Dimitri, Alden of Wolverton, Duke Matthias, Duke Thorfinn. Oh yeah, and then there's me on the edge. I'm like, when it comes to ass kicking, I'm at the bottom of the rung here, at the ladder, and I'm decent at the ass kicking. So
you have Bryn over there in the.
Oh yeah, and then Bryn is over here, and that's in the green right there. That's Yannick. He is actually was Thorfinn's squire, and he's the one that currently has the chain of our line. And then just behind him is Sir Alderon Blackwood, who is one of the most savage war fighters that ever took the field. So yeah, that's a pretty serious lineup of killers.
Yes, it is.
And doggies.
And dogs.
Some cute dogs there too.
Yeah. Oh man, this March Crown 2018. Fellowship of the Argent Angel and Associates. This was, I think, the last crown Duke Matthias fought in. This was after he'd had his leg amputated, and he fought single-legged, right? And he would fight standing, and then he would go down and he would fight from his knees. And he still went, I don't know, 7 or 8 rounds in a West Kingdom tournament.
I saw some video of that. Man, that is the most badass video I have ever seen in my life.
He is amazing. And you'll notice, if you look in the picture here, most of the people in here are looking well shorn in the head region. A lot of us, for the entire time Matt was in chemo, we all kept our heads shaved out of solidarity with him.
Pretty sweet. And
yeah, it's good. That's a good wrecking crew right there, definitely.
And Ob's son.
And Ob's son, Cameron, who I refer to affectionately as my nephew, because I've known him since he was born. And when you're trying to describe SCA familial relationships to people that aren't in the SCA, you have to find terms that make sense to them. And nephew just makes the most sense at all for people that don't do what we do. And Cameron's a great human being. He just graduated from college this year, which unfortunately we all didn't get to go to his graduation because of the pandemic and everything. So, but I talk to him. I try and talk to him pretty frequently. I miss him. Miss all these guys.
So I have to say that going through all your pictures, it's very emotional to see the strong familial and brotherhood bonds that you have with your people. It's always been very inspiring to me. And I had a good cry going through your pictures.
I have a good cry going through my pictures sometimes too. If I have decided for whatever reason that you're part of my crew, then it's ride or die, right? You're part of my crew. And these are the people that I connected with for the SCA, whether I connected with them early or I connected with them later on, whether I haven't seen them in 10 years or more, which happens because life happens to everybody. They're my people, right? We would always say, semi-jokingly, though we were serious, these were friends that you would, if they called you in the middle of the night and it was a torrential downpour and you had to drive 5 hours to pick them up because they're stranded on a bridge in the middle of nowhere, there's no doubt that the people they called were going to show up, right? And we weren't told we had to do that. We decided we were going to do that for each other when we got to know each other. And that carried through everything we did. So, and those are the kind of, this is another Aaronwood shot. And of a tight-knit group of people in the SCA, this is an even closer knit group, right? This particular group of people, specifically because it's invite, specifically because you're being asked to fight a very specific high tournament style, right? It's a very close-knit group right here. That's me in the red. I changed my look about 2 years ago. I think it's coming up on 2 years ago. I migrated out of my Crusader helm and my Crusader look to a more 14th century look. Switched to a bassinet and everything. I wanted to change up from using a full-size shield to using a buckler, and using a buckler and a closed face helmet is just a tough row to hoe. So, if you're going to switch your helmet, you might as well just change up everything and make your kit look good.
Make it as hard as possible.
That franchise, it's important.
Yeah.
Those are some brutal two-handed footman's maces we're using right there. They are never fun to get hit with.
Yeah.
Is this a gallery up here?
It is. So on the
Very
corners, there are two. Actually, this is a scoring tower. I misspoke. On the corners of each of these two fields are scoring towers where they're marking down. We fight 3 matches and they keep points and all these kinds of things. They're hanging up our coats of arms on the front of the tower so you know who's fighting, all this stuff. And then essentially to the right of this picture is where the actual gallery is. A permanent wooden, for years it was just a tent. One of the things that we do for Aaronwood to help out is, and in order to participate, is everybody who's going to fight in the tournament comes up and does at least one work improvement weekend over the year where we build, we paint or we build new stuff or whatever it is we happen to do to improve the site. So for years we used a canvas gallery, and then eventually, I want to say in like 2011 or 2012, we built a permanent wooden gallery. for everybody to sit in, which is good because we run this on Memorial Day weekend most years, and occasionally it would still rain up in the Sierras there. So having a nice covered gallery for everybody was great.
Very cool.
Oh, that's Sir Ursel. Sir Ursel became one of my really close friends when I moved down here to CAID. I've lived in 3 kingdoms now, though I've really only actively participated in 2. When we were in Drachenwald, we were doing a lot of other things, a lot of traveling around. We didn't do too many SCA events, so we weren't incredibly active there, but I've been very active in the West in CAID. And when I moved down to CAID, I feel like this would have happened wherever I went. You're just going to find your people, right? The people who you want to spend time with. And Ursel was one of those. And I got to help him on his path. He was squire when I moved down. I'm friends with his knight, Dante, as well. And I got to help him traverse this and make it to the point where he got knighted. And then he asked me to be his announcing herald, to walk him in when he came in for his knighting. And I was pretty honored that I got to do that. Funny story about that one. I had written a thing because I've done a lot of public speaking in my life, and I do a bunch of it as part of my work. My brain is always churning in the back on ways to say things and improve things. And I had a thing all written out, and I thought it was pretty good. And I was getting in bed the night before his knighting, and I had a brainstorm, and I got up and I wrote a whole new thing that I spoke on the way in. It's on video somewhere. Somebody has it on the internet, and I spoke it, and it felt really good. I was like, yes, that was way better than what I had originally. So, yeah.
Very cool.
Oh boy.
Some
I
trouble.
feel like this is mimosa day drinking at Estrella, given that Sir Adrian's wearing a mullet there. Mullet wig. I think that's probably what this was.
What is that she has on her head? Is it
I think it's a mullet wig. I think that's what it is.
Okay.
I think a mullet wig was floating around and we were all taking turns wearing it. So
I pulled this. It was a post she did about appreciating you. And so that's why I pulled it.
Great.
But it's
I appreciate her a lot. She became another one of my good friends when I moved down here to CAID. And then she moved out to the Outlands, where it takes sometimes you have to change your circumstances to figure out who you are, like fundamentally. And she'd grown up in CAID, right? Her parents were in the SCA and all that stuff. And I feel like she really figured out who she was when she went to the Outland. It makes me super happy when people do that.
Back when we were young and
oh man, that's a lot of skin. There's skin right there. Definitely a lot. Am I in this picture? Did I take this picture? Oh, there I am, right in the middle. So yeah, there was a time, and we blamed FIAC for the Hurley craze that happened in the West and Ontario in the early 2000s. And we played it every chance we could get. We played it at Crowns, we played it at Coronations, we played it at West Ontario Wars, we played at Penzic, and nobody got permanently damaged. I think I had to take Sir Dimitri to the ER at Penzic because he took a Hurley to the face and had to get stitches in his lip. Which is amazing that was the worst injury that we had. Because every time we do this, it was after we were fighting, so everybody's tired already, and now we're going to run out and swing sticks with no helmets on. That seems like smart playing.
it's a rough sport.
It is. And we were young, and we were kind of dumb. So Master Fionn, I don't think Master Fionn's in this picture. Master Fionn's from Ireland originally too. And so he grew up playing Hurley, and he brought a number of times, he brought his brother to the events with us, and his brother grew up being good at playing Hurley, and he would come out and school us. Right? It's like you go to Canada and you're like, I'm going to play hockey, and somebody that's playing hockey since they were 3, right? They don't even think of themselves as that good, and they just skate circles around you. It was exactly that kind of thing. And he just did that, and it was a blast. We had so much fun. We go play on the weekend, non-event weekends. We just get together in the park and play Hurley for, I don't know, 2 or 3 years we did that.
It was so much fun to watch.
That was a blast.
I
Oh
thought
wow,
that was really cool.
that I'd forgotten about that. Yeah. So these don't always happen. they happened for this particular crown tournament. I think it was the first one that Agrippa won for Bridget. And someone decided that they were going to, oh yes, because we wanted to increase participation in the crown tournaments. And CAID crown tournaments in general are relatively small, 20, 30 tops people in a crown tournament in CAID. We wanted to give the opportunity for more fighting. So we decided to run a crucible style tournament, right? Where we have the big fighting on all the different fields ahead of time, and then where only the people who have entered crown go on to the next section. And these were all of the people that had entered crown for that year. I'd forgotten about this great piece of art. So,
Pretty cool.
yeah, it is really cool. It's neat to look at and be like, oh, right, I fought him at that tournament.
And I love that the inspiration names are on there as well. But
Me too.
happy.
There's a great, I don't know if you found this picture. There's a great picture, and I think it's from this tournament of Seun and I, where she's kissing me on the head when I'm kneeling. Did you find that one?
I didn't. This
Okay.
this is the only other one of the two of you that I pulled.
This is adorable too. I'll see if I bet I can find that one pretty quick. of
Okay.
her and I. Yeah, this is another one at Aaronwood where we were probably just hanging out in between fighting. So
Paul says that Master Lachlan of Cromarty made the scroll.
awesome. Master Lachlan did a great job. So yeah, Sam and I, we were probably just talking to people in the gallery in between fighting bouts. Oh my goodness.
Oh, what is going on here?
Remember the story about the rugby songs?
Yes.
Yeah, so this was in Estrella War. This was when the Viking camp was in big swing, when all the Viking-like people had started coming over from Europe, right? And in all their different forms. And Sturbjorn set up his big camp at Estrella, and we added all kinds of things to it. And then we decided that in addition to the really cool historic Viking stuff, stories and things we were telling, we had to do I'm being followed by a buttfucker and put some poor person in front who had no idea what he was getting in for. And we did. I don't think I was there this year. We definitely did this in honor of Bob, right? That's Thorfinn in the green, and then me, and then Duke Alden, and then Duke Matthias. There may be somebody behind Matthias too. It's totally possible.
So
Yeah.
nice.
We were definitely a little into our cups at the point this picture was taken.
They have so many good games they play.
Yeah. Same night. I think this was likely chronologically before the previous picture. Thorfinn still has his cloak on. I've got a hat on and everything. So yeah, we're looking a little more put together. So, it's interesting to me to see and there's another one, to see some of these older pictures of me when, to me, I look so different than the way I look now. I got in the mid 2000s because of injury and bad diet and some things like that. I got pretty heavy for a while, not super tall, and I was well over 200 pounds. And so seeing these, and I wore facial hair, which I don't do anymore. So seeing these pictures, like, oh, right, that is what I look like. I'd forgotten. Those are my tall red boots.
Yeah, I remember those boots very
I still
good.
have them.
It's awesome.
I'm not wearing them right now. I still have them though. So Sir Adrian always tries to steal them from me and frequently succeeds. She'll sneak into my tent when I'm not wearing them, and she'll put them on and start walking around the site saying she's Sir Artos. It's pretty funny.
Awesome.
Yeah. Oh, that's like Beltane site, probably a coronation, probably one of Alden's coronations, which we did Viking style. He did one of the ones where we did a boat, right, where people were holding banners like sails, and we stood with holding the shields around the edge, and we carried them in on, the bigger, stronger fellows carried them in on platforms. I never get that job for some reason. I don't know why.
I think this might be Uther and Karin.
That would make total sense if this was Uther and Karin. Yep. We did that for a number of people.
That's all I have. Plenty more of those. So.
Oh man, those are some great. Thanks for the trip down memory lane. Yeah. I've been in this game a while. You didn't even find some of the really old ones. Hold on. I think I can grab. Let me do this really quick. I have some stored locally here. Let me pull up.
So while you're pulling up pictures,
Yeah,
Artos is not your original SCA name.
It is not. Okay, yeah, I found some good ones here. So my original SCA name was very long and very Gaelic. So the people that I was very close with when I was at the College of St. Brendan also had some very long and very Gaelic names. I kind of embraced that thing at the time. I liked the kind of Irish heritage. I liked wearing kind of like loud clothes, plaids and stripes together and things like that. And so I had a very long Irish name, and I was fine with that. What happened is that when I decided to come back after I'd taken that break from my career, and when I decided I was going to come back to the SA and do things more seriously, I felt like I was a different person. Like I had grown, I had changed, my interests were different. I was certainly way more interested in Romano-British history than early Irish history at that point, things that centered around the time of the historical Arthur. And so I decided to go with a name and not really persona, but a name that was from there. So that was when I switched from, okay, I'm gonna see if I can say it, see if I can still say my old name. My old name was Uliam Katak Omofrenin, which meant William Curly Hair of Brendan, which was very appropriate for my younger self. That was my name. And then when I came back, I decided I wanted to be Artis Quintus. So that's when I switched over. And because I liked the Romantic British thing, and then I started wearing Crusader armor, and I wear primarily 14th century clothes because I'm in the SCA, and that's what I like to do.
And you do what you want.
I do what I want.
Okay, so you have some pictures?
I do. Let me pull up. Hold on. Where is it? I just saw it. Oh, here we go. Okay, here we go. I'm gonna open this one. I'm gonna share screen. Check this out.
Whoa.
This is from college. I don't know if the original picture was in black and white or if it's just faded over the years. I don't even know if I have the original picture anymore. And somebody, maybe from the local college paper, maybe it was a class project or something, in the dorms, people knew I was the dude with medieval armor and things in his dorm room, and they wanted to do a picture for it. So they had me put on garb, and they arranged this thing. That was my original anvil that cut from a railroad tie that I got from someone. That is my first helmet that I ever purchased, which I'm pretty sure is an old Get 'em on the Field Ashcraft Baker spun helm. Man, the thing rang like a bell. I don't think I have that anymore. And then look at that super young guy there. Man.
If I came upon this picture and didn't know who it was, I would almost think it was Torfin, our Torfin.
Right. I could see that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
wow.
Yeah, that's a pretty good one. Let me see what else I've got.
It's giving like the how you doing eyes.
Folder. Yeah, how you doing? Oh man, where is? I have one.
Wants to know who crocheted your beret.
My knight, Sir Theodoric's lady.
Awesome.
Made that. She was very good at making things, and every year she would make all of us a new set of clothes, which actually we would usually get it for 12th night. And I thought, especially because we're young and in college and stuff, I thought that was a kind of a great tradition. So now generally at Great West War, because that's when I have all my students together, I tend to give them a gift of some kind, whether it's clothing. It was shoes one year. They all got Bohemian boots, things like that, right? Right. There's a certain part of franchise that to me is showing people what it could be, right? What they might want it to be. And so they get my style to start with, and then they can evolve into their own style over time, whatever that happens to be.
I love that. I might have to steal that. I like to do random gifts, but I would love to like do an annual gift to my people. I think that's really cool.
I was thinking the very same thing. That needs to happen.
This is another good one. This is another Esmeralda photo. Gosh, she takes good photos. She makes me look so good every time. This was at a Great Western War. It might have been when Sir Niccolo was getting knighted. He had a field knighting, and she was, as she does, standing back and looking for people and taking photos of them. And somebody said something funny, and I laughed. And she grabbed this photo, and I love this photo. I use it all the time. So that particular hat is not the same hat I'm wearing here. That used to be at one point my everyday wear hat, and then it got faded. It was like a dark indigo at one point. You can see it's not a dark indigo anymore here. And so it became lives in my fighting bag hat. So when we take our helmets off and we're on the field, it's silly to stand out there in the sun in any way. And so I keep a hat in my bag so I can pull it out, put it on. That's a great shot. Where is the one?
The picture that got you best smile.
Yeah, I think that is quite possibly one of them. There's a picture of me that I'm looking for here. That's me in my first real set of armor. Man, where is that?
We didn't really talk about your knighting much, but how was the buffet from Havek?
Stout. So we talked about it, and I appreciate this. And if I'm ever in the position where I'm reigning and I have the opportunity to knight somebody, I'll have a similar conversation. Where well before, at the minimum, the night before the buffet's going to happen, you have the conversation about how hard and where do you want to get hit, right? We shouldn't make any assumptions here. Some people don't want to get in the head. That's fine, right? I'm good with that. If that's not what you want to do. And so we had that conversation. And what I told him was, I want to know that you hit me, and I need to remember everything about this day, right? And he is somebody that has that infinite dial of power, right? He's got that skill where he can hit you exactly as hard as you need to be hit, whenever it is, in armor, and he can do it out of armor too. And so I got down on my knees. I had been up all night, so I was a little kind of sleep punch drunk, right? As I'm going through my knighting, which is kind of a neat way to go through your ceremony. And so when it came time, right, and King says, bow your head. I was like, I bowed my head and I just took a deep breath and just tried to relax as much as I could. And I actually don't remember the impact. I don't remember getting hit. I remember my world starting to move like this. And then Duke Thorfinn's right here on my shoulder because he knew what was going to happen. And he catches me before I hit the ground and just stands me back up on my knees again and sets me there so I could do the rest of it. Magical though. Where's that picture? I have a picture of, hold on. There's the picture of me with the blade on my head. Oh, is it still open? There it is. Here we go. This is another one of my very medieval moments right here. So Duke of Eck, edge of the blade on my head. He did a really cool thing in my dubbing, which I've seen some other kings do in the past, where W once, W twice, I W knight, and he dubbed me on each shoulder with the flat, and then he turns it 90 degrees and he dubbed me on the crown of the head with the edge of the blade, and just put it there, and you can really feel it. It doesn't even have to be sharp. You can feel it when that edge is on your head, and I can still remember it and feel it to this day, right? And he says, I W knight, right at that moment when he puts it on my head. I was like, that's amazing. If I ever get the opportunity, I'm 100% going to do that for someone, because it just felt like my medieval moment. So,
Having that physical, visceral.
Yep.
That's really cool.
And that was my own sword that he dubbed me with there. I swore fealty on the Great Sword of State. And originally I was going to be dubbed with Ob's sword. Unfortunately, we had to move my knighting from the morning court to the afternoon court because Ob was a teacher and he had to take some sort of continuing education test. Like it had to be that day. So he did that in the morning and then grabbed all his stuff and bombed up the site so he could be there for my knighting and everything, and forgot to bring his sword.
Oh.
It happens, right? So I'm like, that's great. We'll do it with mine. Right. So I got knighted with my own sword, and I look forward to it at some point, somebody else getting knighted with it.
Awesome.
Yeah. A lot of serious face in this picture. Serious face.
Thorfinn's face is so serious.
Thorfinn face. Sane's even got serious face right there, right?
Oh,
Everybody knows Sane for her laugh, not for her serious face.
It's a very solemn occasion.
Solemn yet celebratory, right? Yeah, it was great. My Danny was great. I was knighted in 2012. I was 41 years old, and I'd been in the SCA since I was 17, right? So that's a long path to go on. A lot of my really good friends were knighted right chased the path really hard from the time they got in and were knighted in their early 20s, right after being the SCA for 3 to 5 years or something like that. And that wasn't my path. And so when I got there, like this was a thing. This is a thing I'd wanted since I was a kid, and it was happening. My youngest brother was actually able, right? And I say youngest, right? He's a grown man too, right? He was able to come to the event, which was great. He had done the SCA some when he was a teenager. He had come with Sayun and I to events and things like that for a number of years, and it was great. And he hadn't been back to one, but he wanted to come to my knighting, and he came to my knighting, and he was the one that carried my sword up for me and then presented it to the king. He was also the person who gave me that sword. So one Christmas, my brother, I had been talking about that sword. That's a Albion Armor Spatha. It's my sword. And I had been talking about it, and my brother decided to get it for me for Christmas, and he gave it to me. So I was really happy that it could be at my ceremony and then hand that sword to the king.
So cool. So many magic elements in everything.
Yep.
So
that's
good.
one of the things we have in the SCA that maybe you don't get if you don't have a group like the SCA is you don't get ceremony in your life, right? The rites of passage, the marking of time, the people actively celebrating you and you celebrating other people. Right? If you don't have that kind of a group like the SCA, you don't get that opportunity. And I love that about the SCA.
Did you have since your path to knighthood was so long, did you have a point where you just sort of gave up, or did you just kind of keep with it?
I had some flip the table, cry after practice moments, absolutely, where I hit my level of frustration because I didn't feel like I was making the progress I needed, or I just couldn't do this thing that I'd been working on for a long time, or my friends were just, always beating me up. And fortunately, I had a good group, and they would help me get some perspective. One of the things that we did for perspective was we traveled. We would go other places and fight other people. And what that really cemented for me was that I was training in the super deep end of the pool as I was coming up to knighthood, right? I was already a peer. Most of my friends, close friends, were peers. And so those were the people I were hanging out with. Most of them were knights, and a lot of them were dukes. And so those were the people I fought every day. And as you're working your way up, as you're gaining your skill, if the only thing you're measuring yourself against is knights and dukes, you're always going to feel like you come up short. And so you have to find other ways to define success for yourself, right? Your win condition cannot be, I won that fight all the time, because it's not going to happen. Only one person's going to win the tournament, right? Two people in a fight, only one person's going to win the fight. And if that person is significantly more experienced than you, that's a much steeper hill to climb, right? So what is your win condition? That was the early part of, I think, me becoming a better teacher and a better coach, was learning how to teach and coach myself through a lot of that stuff, right? My win condition is Duke Radnor's not going to one-shot me, right? That's a great win condition when you're starting out, right? If Duke, whoever, doesn't just, pump fake you and smack you upside the head or something like that, that's a great win condition. So it was a painful path at times. I cried on my friend's shoulders, I cried on Sayun's shoulder, right? I had some frustrating moments where I didn't want to go to practice. I think that is true of any hard-won skill. You're going to go through that, whether it's physical or not. The two greatest skills anyone can gain in life are empathy and grit. And if you have those, you can do anything, right? I'm not the most physically gifted. I'm not the biggest, right? And I figured it out. I figured out what my style needed to be. I figured out what I needed to be to get knighted. Spoiler, a big part of it was getting my ass in really good shape and cross-training a lot, because I'm not a man mountain, and I can't rely on the physics of being somebody that's 6'4" and 250 pounds, right? So I had to figure out other ways. And I'm glad I did it. And I then use those lessons to teach people both in our hobby as well as professionally, right? To help them figure out how to push through the wall to get to whatever their next level is, to define their win conditions, right? So they're not measuring themselves against their metaphorical dukes all the time.
I think that's really important. Really important. So another thing I wanted to ask you about is I think right before you left the West,
Mhm.
you and Sayun both were entered in the Western Roll of Honor.
Yes, we were.
Tell me about that.
That's a really neat and not frequently given accolade in the West for people that have, I guess I would say, just by your presence, you have made everything better. I actually can't remember the exact wording of the official ceremony. That's how I would summarize it for
Yeah.
someone. And it was nothing I had ever thought about. It was not an award I had ever strived for in any way. There's only been a few of those awards in my life that I said I would like to achieve that thing. Knighthood was one of them. Another one was the period appearance on the field award, right? That kind of thing. Like those are things that I'm like, I would like to do that. I would like people to recognize me for that. And this one wasn't one that I had thought about. And so I was pretty floored when we were called up and inducted into that. And then to hear from all the people afterwards about how happy they were that we were inducted and the difference that we had made to them in whatever way in our time in the West. I think that's great. People can have an unfortunate tendency to wait till too late to tell people good things. And I'm glad that our friends didn't wait for that, right? And it's a lesson I've tried to take. Don't wait to tell people stuff.
Yeah.
So you will find, for those that know me, I'm definitely the person that will tell you, hey, you look great today. Hey, I love that outfit. I love the way you fought that thing, right? Whatever it happens to be. I'm going to tell you that. I'm also the friend that's going to tell you, hey, I think you could be better at this thing and here's why, right? I'm going to tell you that too. And people know that all they're getting from me is they're getting that because I love them, right? That's what I'm doing.
100% on that, and I'm 100% on travel to go see your friends. Don't wait for their funeral. Like, just spend the money now and spend time.
Yep.
You're never going to get that back.
Okay. Yeah, last few years have been a bunch of loss across the board for a number of friends and family for us, and it sucks. And it's not like it slows down as you get older necessarily. So embrace it, right?
Yeah.
Go see all your people. Certainly, as soon as this thing is over that we got going on right now, we're going to be doing some traveling and seeing people again.
100%.
Absolutely. Okay.
Yeah.
We got deep. We got deep and serious there, which is fine. I like to do that as well as tell silly stories about myself.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that makes you I'm so awesome, for lack of better.
Thank you.
It's one of the things that makes you somebody that I've always really respected and admired. So
thank you.
Now I'm bummed that I never got over my shyness and said hello. We're
That's
in
okay.
the same place.
Guess what? You're getting a big hug when I see you for real.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah. So I found this picture of me in my early armor. I was like, "Ooh, I think I know where it is," and I found it. I need to share this.
Okay.
It's really good.
Oh my god.
Oh yeah. This is in the hall in the dorm.
I was gonna say, is that the dorm?
Oh, absolutely. Those cinder block walls. What else could it be? So I fought with a side strap round shield for my first probably 5 or 6 years of fighting. And you know who fights with side strap round shields? Like all those skeletons that die in the Ray Harryhausen movies. They're shitty shields. They're really bad. They were the shield du jour at the time. I have since moved on. I don't mind a center grip round, but a side strap round, I was stubborn and I stuck with that too long. That was a mistake, definitely. So. Everything there though, all that armor I'm wearing, I'm pretty sure, I feel like I made or helped make everything that I'm wearing in that picture.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
No, that is not bad first armor at all. Like there's not a lot of plastic on that. My first set of armor was horrid. That's pretty nice.
This is my first set of armor that was 100% mine. I definitely fought in some horrid stuff that was loaner gear and cast-offs that people had in their garage, all those things you do so you can get on the field. I definitely had that. I don't think I have any pictures of it, but this was my friend Dave had a shop, and Sir Drew, who was down here at the time, had a shop, and they opened them up and people could come in and work on stuff and they'd teach you. So I didn't have many of the tools, and especially for doing serious metal work at that point. So I would come over and like in that brigandine, I punched all the holes in the plates and got all the plates ready. And then I took it back to my dorm room, and on the floor of my dorm room with a little tack anvil, I riveted all those plates into the brigandine. So
You were that guy.
I was 100% that guy. I was and still am a nerd, and I'll wear that on my sleeve every
Nice.
time right here.
And that was a bicycle tire edging on your shield.
100, yes. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. I don't even think a 10-speed. I think that was like a big knobbly like mountain bike tire edge too. That was a heavy shield. It was a heavy and a dumb shield. I would never be so mean as to hand someone a side strap round anymore.
Yeah.
And if they showed up with one, I would try and coach them out of it. If that's their choice and they really want to do it, then I'm going to help them try and be as good at it as they possibly can. I'm also going to try and, oh man, that's another great shot. Man, I found a folder that's got some great pictures in it.
Come on. Oh,
Estrella, that's myself, Oddvar in the middle, and Achilles on the left, coming off the field after a day of crazy fighting.
nice.
Man, what's that? That's probably 2002 or 2003, I would imagine. Somewhere around there. We'd done a lot of killing that day, I'm pretty sure. That's what war is. War's for killing. So tournaments are for fighting. Oh, here we go. Here's a good, this might show my ponytail really well. Let's see. Yeah, that's a good one. Kind of like that. Huh?
Wow.
Oh, that's glorious.
Yeah. If you would pull the curls on that old hair, it would go down to my belt at its longest. It only hung probably to my shoulder blades without pulling the curl out. So
My kids both have hair like that.
they
It's
do. Your kids have some hair.
it's
I love
It's the hair I always wanted.
it.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, is there anything that we have not talked about that you would like to talk about?
I don't think I have anything in particular I liked that I had in mind. I was happy to answer whatever questions you had and take you down whatever path my brain went.
Awesome.
Which I feel like we did. I feel like we wandered quite a bit and we talked about a bunch of different things and all that.
I feel like it was really good. I wanted to thank you again for hopping in last minute. We had a cancellation, and you have been on my list for a long time. And doing this on like 3 days notice is a pretty epic thing. So thank you very, very much.
You're very welcome. It's probably a lot of years having to speak extemporaneously at court. Makes me comfortable with this. Having to do, being told, hey, we need to present to the board of directors tomorrow and for work, and then having to do that. I think I've just developed the skill of rolling with it at this point.
We appreciate it.
I'm just glad you didn't ask me to do a PowerPoint or anything. That would have been more work. So,
Yeah, I couldn't even ask you to put pictures together because I was like, I've already asked so much. I'm just going to do it myself. So
thank you.
thanks. So who do you have this week?
You know, I am talking to Duke Fabian of the West
Ooh,
Kingdom on
one of my heroes.
4th on Monday. I have heard amazing things about him. He's also a Laurel for
Yes.
armoring. And then we're talking to Duke Arthur of Lock Haven next Wednesday, who has been a player for a very, very long time in Aiden Belt. So both of those should be super cool.
And
Right.
then on Tuesday, I am talking to Sir Ferris, and I'm not going to try the rest of the name because I will butcher it. And he's from Outlands now. He was from Aiden Belt, and he kind of gave me the idea to do the Laurel interviews.
Oh,
So he posted something about wanting to see people who had done really good persona development. And I was like, well, can I run with that, but do it this way? And he said, yes, go for it. And so I'm very thankful that he helped me get this thing going, and I'm really excited to talk to him. So
Very cool. So I want to thank you again for joining us, and I want to thank everybody for joining us all year long. And hopefully you guys will join us in the new year, and I wish you all a happy new year. I hope you have fun at home and you get to see your friends at least maybe on Zoom or something. It's been quite a ride, and we really appreciate you taking it with us.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you.
So,
all right. Well, thanks everyone. And thank you very much, Artos. And
You're very welcome.
we'll talk to you soon.
all right. Thanks everyone. See you
Bye.
later.
Good night.